Good morning to everyone. We will continue discussing Fundamentals of Accounting, chapters 1 and 2, and this material is taken from the book of Ma'am Hinayon and Ma'am Beticon, and this is only prepared for the purpose of providing material to my students from 1A10 of UST AMV College of Accountancy for the first semester of school year 2020, and this is primarily prepared due to the current unavailability of the book, and copying any part of this and disseminating without the consent of the preparer and of course the authors is violative of the law and punishable as such. So you should not copy nor send this to others, and this is only for reading purposes. So let's start. As we have discussed last time, accounting is related to different industries. That's why accounting is very important. And in the book, it was discussed the different kinds of industries or business ownerships were discussed in order to have a background on where do this accounting is being applied. So, saan ba ginagamit yung accounting? We have different business ownerships, business enterprises. As we have discussed last time, we have a sole proprietorship, we have partnerships, we have corporations, and it's not included in the book, but also we have some joint ventures, cooperatives, and all other kinds of associations or entities which are intended either to engage in business activities or whatever kind of activities. And in these entities, accounting is being used. So, yun yung relevance ni accounting. Bakit baka meron tayong accounting? And as a recap, we have sole proprietorship. Sole proprietorship is the most basic legal form of business. It has only one owner called the proprietor. And the proprietor may operate on his or her own or may employ others as business operations expand. So, ano ba yung sole proprietor na yan? Sa madaling sabi yan, yung business na ang nagmamayari ay isang tao lang. So, kung nari ikaw gusto mo magkaroon ng sarili mong business, magtatayo ka ng business mo, wala kang ibang taong gustong makasama sa business na yan, you can form a sole proprietorship on your own. So, common examples, you have cell phone repair services, you have your food business, your buy and sell of your books, your gadgets, or whatever. So, as long as it is only you who own the business, then that is called sole proprietorship. So, what is the advantage of sole proprietorship? It is an easy form of entity. Why? Because it is easy because it is easy to form. It is easy to create. Because all you have to do is to decide on yourself na magtatayo ka ng business. And the different requirements are very easy. You just have to go to your barangay to get barangay certificate to form a business. And then you go to the mayor's office to get a mayor's permit. And then after that, you go to the BIR to get a certificate of registration. So, ganun lang kadali. Ikaw lang. And then, wala kang ibang kakausapin na mag-contribute ng money together with you. So, ikaw lang talaga. But, what is the disadvantage? The disadvantage is that it will be harder for you to build or to expand your capital because it's only you who is the source of the capital. So, unlike for partnerships and corporations which are composed of two or more persons, mas maliit ang capital na mamibuild ni sole proprietor compared if there is a pool of funds coming from other people. So that's the disadvantage. The advantage is that it's easy to form. However, the disadvantage is that the capital would be limited. And then, another advantage is that it's easy to close. So, kung sole proprietor ka, madali magtayo, madali din i-close kasi it's on your own volition. Pero disadvantage din yun. Kasi kapag namatay na ang sole proprietor, syempre, wala na din yung business. And another advantage is that the sole proprietorship has less complicated business transactions, minimal regulatory requirements. So, madali lang siya. And, konti lang din yung regulation sa kanya ni government. All you have to do as a sole proprietor is to comply with the BIR, the filing of the returns, ganun lang. Walang tinatawag na corporate governance unlike sa corporation. Okay, so it's very easy. But, another disadvantage of a sole proprietor is that although another disadvantage is that it has unlimited personal liability. So, ano ibig sabihin nun? The properties of the sole proprietor will be held liable for the liabilities of the business. So, dahil ikaw ang may-ari, walang separate personality si may-ari ng business at yung business niya. Kaya pag nagkaroon ng utang yung business at hindi nabayaran ng assets ng business, kukunin ngayon ng mga creditors yung pambayad doon sa utang sa mga properties, personal properties ni sole proprietor. So it means that the debts incurred by the business will extend to the personal property of the sole proprietor in order to satisfy the obligations due to the creditors of the business. Ayan. So, yun ang disadvantage. Actually, yan ang pinaka-disadvantage niya. Because it will extend to the personal assets of the sole proprietor. And of course, needless to say, in decision-making, disadvantageous din siya. Kasi ikaw lang magde-decide sa sarili mo. If the economic decision would be complicated, then there is no partner for you. There is no another person who would help you decide on that matter. So, walang second opinion or walang pooling of opinions, pooling of ideas. Ikaw lang mag-isa. So, may disadvantage talaga siya. Although, kung nagsisimula ka lang naman, then sole proprietor would be the best. Kasi you can go away with so many requirements. What about partnership? Partnerships are governed by the new Civil Code of the Philippines under Title 9. So, ano ba nakalagay doon sa Article 1767? It is provided that a partnership is a contract between two or more persons who bind themselves to contribute money, property, or industry to a common fund with the intention of dividing the profits among themselves. So, isa-isahin natin yung elements ng partnership. Sabi, it is a contract. When you say contract, there is meeting of the minds. May agreement between the parties. Sino bang parties dito? Two or more persons. So, walang limit. As long as ma-reach mo yung minimum na two. Siyempre, partnership, kailangan two. Hindi mo pwedeng partnership na ikaw lang mag-isa. So, two or more persons. Pero walang limit. Kahit ilan kayo. As long as you have an agreement. And what is that agreement? To contribute either money, property, or industry into a common fund. So, it will be contributed and pulled into a common fund with the intention of dividing the profits among themselves. So, ang agreement nila is, dalawa sila or more na maglalagay ng capital sa isang common fund, palalagawin ito, and the profits will be divided among themselves. So, that is partnership. And that's what we have discussed last time. When you say partnership, it can either be business partnership or general professional partnership. When you say business partnership, the partnership is primarily engaged in trade or business. So, magbi-business siya. Pero, pag sinabi mong general professional partnership, that partnership is primarily engaged in the exercise of profession of certain professionals. So, sa una, business partnership, alam nyo na yun, yung mga usual na business. Parang sole proprietor lang, pero nagkataon na two or more persons sila. Any form of business, as long as legitimate. Pero pag naman general professional partnership, that is intended for the exercise of profession. So, what are the different examples? Yung auditing firm, yung accounting firm. This is an entity wherein two or more accountants have agreed to pool their resources and practice their profession. And any income that they have earned between the two of them, or any income that they have earned in the practice of their profession, will be divided between themselves. What else? You have the engineering firms. Ano pa? Yung mga architectural firms. Ano pa? Law firms, lawyers, and all the other professionals. So what is the gist? The gist is that pag business partnership, engage in trade or business, except profession. Pero pag general professional partnership, they are only engaged in the exercise of their profession. Now, pag partnership, di ba naalala nyo kayo na sinabi ko, pag sole proprietorship, there is no separate there is no separate juridical personality. Pero pag partnership, Article 1768 provides that a partnership has a juridical personality separate and distinct from that each of the partners. And in case of failure to comply with the formal requirement of partnership under 1772, which mandates that every contract of partnership having a capital of 3,000 or more shall appear in a public instrument and which must be recorded in the SEC. Ano ibig sabihin nun? Haba naman nun. Sabi lang dyan, pag ang partnership ay nabuo, merong separate juridical personality. When you say juridical personality, personality in the eyes of law. And it is separate. So in the eyes of law, the partners themselves are separate from the partnership itself. So the partnership can enter into contract on its own name, not in the name of the partners. So kung si partners A and B entered into a partnership called AB partnership, the AB partnership can enter into a contract with third persons. Hindi niya kailangang dalhin ang pangalan A and B per se. It can enter into contract using the name of AB partnership. And if there would be a case or a suit, ang sasampahan ng kaso, generally, ang sasampahan ng kaso ni third person dapat ay si AB partnership. Hindi dapat si partner A and si partner B because there is a juridical personality that is separate and distinct from the partners. Siyempre, that is the general rule. Exception to the rule is what we have discussed last time, that if there is fraud that is done by the partners, siyempre, pag may fraud na, hindi na si partnership ang sasampahan ng kaso. Kasama na ngayon si partners A and B. Mapipierce na ngayon yung juridical personality na separate because they have abused the separate juridical personality in order to perform an unlawful act. But generally, as long as everything is legal, then partnership may be sued on its own name. Partnership may enter into a contract on its own name. Partnership can own assets on its own name, can incur expenses, can earn income. Ayan. Merong separate juridical personality. So, unlike doon sa sole proprietorship kanina na sinasabi ko, diba si sole proprietorship, dahil wala siyang separate juridical personality, unlimited ang liability. Dito sa partnership, may pagkakataon na limited ang liability. Pero, ayun pala, sorry to confuse. Pero when you say partnership, kahit na meron siyang separate juridical personality, generally, the liability of the partnership will extend pa rin sa partners. So, pag wala ng asset si partnership, naubos na, the liabilities of the partnership will be extended and will be satisfied through the assets of the partners. Ayan. Wala din siyang unlimited din ang kanyang liability. Except, ayun, general rule kasi, the liability will extend to the assets of the partners. Exception to the rule is that if the partnership is one of a limited partnership. Pag sinabi mong limited partnership, meron kang limited partner. Ano ba naman kasi yung, meron kasi tayong tinatawag na general partnership, meron din tayong tinatawag na limited partnership. Pag ang partnership mo ay general partnership, if the assets of the partnership are not enough to satisfy the liabilities from third persons, the assets of the partners will satisfy the remaining liabilities. General partnership yon. But if it is a limited partnership wherein there is a limited partner, meron tayong general partner at saka limited partner. Si limited partner, hindi maapektuhan ang assets niya. Kung merong tirang liability doon sa partnership na hindi kayang isatisfy ng assets ni partnership, ang magbe-bear lang nun or ang magbabayad lang nun ay si general partner. Si limited partner, hindi gagalawin ang assets niya. Kay general partner lang. So, yun yung exception to the rule. Diba? General rule, pag may liabilities pa na hindi kayang isatisfy ng assets ni partnership, babayaran ngayon ng assets ni partner yung tirang utang. General rule. Except kapag ang partnership mo ay limited partnership. Hindi lahat ng partners ay magbabayad doon sa tirang liability. So, kung meron pang liability na hindi kayang satisfy ng assets ni partnership, ang magbabayad lang doon sa tirang liability ay si general partner. Si limited partner sa limited partnership ay hindi magbabayad dahil on its name, it says that limited partner. So, yung liability niya, limited lang doon sa kinontribute niya sa partnership. Okay? So, ano naman so, yun yung disadvantage, di ba? Meron pa rin unlimited liability. But the advantage of the partnership over a sole proprietor is that the partnership can raise more capital compared to sole proprietorships. So, sole proprietorships has lesser capital than partnerships. Because, pag partnership, 2 or more persons ang kasama dyan. So, 2 or more persons ang magko-contribute ng capital to common fund. Unlike pag sole proprietorship, mag-isa ka lang. And then, ano pang advantage ng partnership? Advantage siya compared sa sole proprietorship kasi pag partnership, dalawa ang mag-iisip, dalawa ang magmamanage. Pag partnership, dalawa ang mag-iisip, dalawa ang magmamanage. Pero pag sole proprietorship, ikaw lang mag-isa. And ano pang advantage niya? Advantages naman din si partnership compared kay corporation in the sense that it's easier to organize due to less stringent requirements for formation and company monitoring. So, pag nag-organize, mas madali lang. Hindi mo kailangan ng shares of stocks compared sa corporation. Partnership agreement lang between the two of you. Pag nag-agree na si A and B na gusto nilang magkaroon ng partnership, okay na yon. Form na yung partnership. I-register na lang sa SEC. Pero si corporation, hindi ganun kadali. Aside from the agreement between the incorporators, yung magtatayo ng corporation, na gusto nilang magtayo ng corporation, they have to provide articles of incorporation, wherein there are stocks that must be issued, and then they have to comply with the, ngayon, wala na din palang minimum requirement. Pero minimum capital requirement, wala na. Pero mas marami pa rin talaga yung process kumpara sa partnership. And then, kaya lang, disadvantageous si partnership in terms of management as compared to corporation. Because when you say corporation, it has a better advantage due to plurality of owners. Pagka si corporation, usually, mas marami talaga ang mga owners dyan. Unlike pag partnership, mas konti kumpara sa corporation. Although wala namang limit si partnership. And, ano pa ba? Mas malaki ang capital ni corporation kumpara kay partnership. Kasi si corporation, by virtue of issuing shares, it can raise capital. Pero pag partnership kasi, limited lang hanggang sa kung ano lang yung kayang ibigay ni partner. Pero si corporation, as long as it has stocks which can be issued, it can raise capital based doon sa pera na pinambili ng mga stockholders para doon sa stocks nila. Okay, so although partnerships are easier to form than corporations, the life of a partnership is fragile, or it may be dissolved by agreement, by withdrawal of one or more partners, or by the death of or incapacity of a partner. So, ayun din pala. So, aside from the unlimited personal liability, aside from the limitation in capital as compared to corporation, yung life din ni partnership is limited. Pag kasi general partnership yan, pag namatay lang yung isang general partner sa partnership, dissolve na agad yung partnership. Or pag nag-withdraw ang isa sa mga partners, dissolve na agad si partnership. Okay? Yun yung life ni partnership. Unlike pag corporation, kahit na ibenta ni stockholder sa iba yung stocks niya, buhay pa rin ang corporation. Kahit mamatay si stockholder na may hawak ng stocks sa corporation, buhay pa rin si corporation. Ayan. Now, how about corporation? When we say corporation, it is the most complex form of business organization. Complex because there are so many requirements in incorporating and also in maintaining a corporation. There is a regulation for that. The government regulates the corporation. And here in corporation, a person invests in a corporation, and that person is called, at the outset, it is called incorporator. Pero after some time na na-form na siya, tawag na sa kanya ay shareholder. And this right is expressed in the number of shares that he or she purchased, and it is evidenced by a certificate of stock. So a corporation has standardized procedures for its creation, organization, management, and liquidation, as specified in the Corporation Code. So, yun pala yung disadvantage ni corporation and ni partnership kay sole proprietorship. Sa sole proprietorship, there is no law that governs the formation of sole proprietorship. But in corporation and partnership, there are laws that govern it. For partnership, it is governed by the Civil Code. Corporation is governed by the Corporation Code. So, it is more strict. It is stricter because you have to comply with the laws. Otherwise, the corporation will be penalized, or it will be subject to closure kapag hindi nag-comply with the Corporation Code and the other relative laws. So, corporation is managed by the board of directors. Corporation has greatest capacity to raise capital as compared to the partnership and sole proprietorship. Capital may be raised by corporation by selling shares of stocks to the public as a whole. So, yun yung sinasabi ko kanina na ang capital, nakakapag-raise ng capital by selling their shares. And shareholders may transfer the shares from one person to another without even obtaining the consent of other shareholders. So, like kay partnership, pag namatay lang yung isang partner or ayaw na niya, wala nang partnership, madidissolve na. Pero si corporation, kahit mapasa pa yung stock sa ibang tao, buhay pa rin ang corporation. Ito, hindi na applicable to. Yung corporations may exist for a period of not longer than 50 years. Wala na yan. Ngayon, sa new corporation code or sa revised corporation code, there is no more limit in the life of a corporation. The life of the corporation now is unlimited. So what is now the advantage of corporation? What is the best advantage of a corporation compared to partnership and the sole proprietorship? It has limited liability. Yun ang sinasabi natin. Limited liability. Bakit? So, di ba, a while ago, we have discussed that a partnership has a separate juridical personality. Si corporation, meron din. Meron din siyang separate juridical personality. So, ibig sabihin, the corporation has is a separate entity in the eyes of law, separate from the stockholders themselves. So, ibang entity, si corporation, iba din si stockholders. So, yung assets ni corporation ay separate from the assets of the stockholders themselves. The corporation can enter into contract in its own name, separate from the stockholders themselves. Separate juridical personality. Therefore, if the corporation has a liability, it is only the assets of the corporation which is required to pay for that liability. Yung assets ng corporation ang magbabayad dyan sa liability na yan. It will not extend to the assets of the shareholders. Kahit kulang ang assets ni corporation, hindi na yan kukunin doon sa assets ni shareholders. So, kung ano lang yung utang ni corporation, kung may utang man si corporation, kahit mas marami yung utang niya kaysa sa assets si corporation, hindi na mababayaran yun. Hanggang doon na lang, to the extent only of the assets, that the liability will be satisfied. Unlike pag partnership and sole proprietorship, di ba? Generally, yung utang ni partnership, pag kinulang ang assets ni partnership, babayaran ngayon ni partners. The same is true with sole proprietorship. Pag kulang ang assets ni sole proprietorship, mag-e-extend ngayon, babayaran ni sole proprietor. So, yun. General rule, pag corporation, hindi na mag-e-extend. Limited lang ang liability. Yan ang tinatawag nating limited liability. But, exception to the rule, meron ulit piercing of the veil of the separate juridical personality. Again, piercing of the veil of the corporation. Ano ibig sabihin nun? Diba merong separate juridical personality? Yan kasi fiction of law lang yan. Si law lang ang nagsabi. It is only the law that says that there is a separation between the corporation and the stockholders. Now, if there is again fraud or there is illegal act that these stockholders has committed and they are invoking the separate personality of the corporation, that will be pierced. Ano ibig sabihin? Hindi na i-recognize ng law yung separate personality. If that separate personality is used or abused in order to cover an unjust act or unlawful act or fraudulent act. So, kung ginagamit ni stockholders yung separate personality ni corporation wherein they will enter into contract into another person tapos gagawa sila ng fraud, mag-e-extend na ngayon yung liability on that fraudulent contract doon sa assets ng mga stockholders. Because there is fraud, there is unlawful act, there is crime, there is unjust act. There will be piercing of the veil, and that's the exception. But absent any fraud, absent any unjust act, absent any crime, absent any unlawful act, the corporation's existence will be considered separate and distinct from the shareholders. So, ayun. Yun yung advantage niya. Limited liability. So, as what we have mentioned a while ago, corporations are subject to great scrutiny, regulation, control, and supervision by the government. So, kahit maganda sana siya, malaki capital, malaki ang investment, merong limited liability, pero subject naman siya to greater scrutiny and regulation by the government. Walang ganun kay partnership at saka kay sole proprietorship. Meron tayong tinatawag na corporate governance kapag corporation. Because, syempre, dahil meron siyang separate juridical personality, the government would like to protect the public. Kailangan i-monitor yung corporation. Kasi baka mamaya, ginagamit yung corporation in order to cover some unlawful acts. Okay? So, yan. Meron din tayo cooperatives. Mga cooperatives na yan, hindi siya masyadong ni-discuss sa accounting books. Pero, it is also an association wherein the accounting is also used. So, sabi ko nga kanina, yung mga entities, different entities, they use accounting in order to account or to monitor their financial stability, financial performance, financial position. So, ano ba yung cooperative na yan? It's another form of business organization which is not normally included in basic accounting textbooks. But it is defined by the International Cooperative Alliance Statement on the Cooperative Identity as autonomous associations of persons united voluntarily to meet their economic, social, cultural needs and aspirations through jointly owned and democratically controlled enterprises. Okay. So, ano ba yung economic decisions? Bakit ba? Ano ba ang decisions na mga ito? Ano ba ang mga nire-require na decisions ng mga entities na ito? Economic decisions. So, these businesses, these entities, whether sole proprietorship, partnership ba yan, corporation, all other entities, they require business decisions or economic decisions. When you say economic decisions, these are decisions which affects the resources of the entity. That decision will have a financial impact. So, ano ba yung examples? We have proper price to charge for the goods, right business location, ilan ba ang ipoproduce ng goods, ilan bang ibebenta, magkano ang cost, ano yung bibilhin ng mga equipment, yan. Economic decisions. Economic decisions affect the financial aspect of the entity. And in order to have an informed economic decision, when you say informed, reasonable economic decision, there must be proper accounting. So, yun na, papasok si accounting. The financial information available is management's basis for making economic decision. This information is provided by a system called accounting. So, para makapag-decide ng mabuti ang businesses, they need financial information. And that financial information is summarized or is made available through the process of accounting. Kaya kailangan natin na accounting. Now, ano ba yung accounting na yan? As what we have discussed last time, accounting is an art of recording, classifying, and summarizing in a significant manner in terms of money, transactions, events which are in part and at least of a financial character and interpreting the results thereof. Okay? When you say accounting, again, as what we have discussed last time, it starts with the identifying a transaction or event. First, you have to identify whether that event or transaction is financial in nature. Pag nasa negotiation stage pa lang yan, hindi yan kasama sa accounting process. Kunwari, di ba, nag-set an example last time, nag-agree pa lang si Mr. A and B into buying and selling a certain good. Hanggat hindi pa sila nag-agree, wala pang contract between the two. Wala pa tayong tinatawag na financial event. Wala pa eh. Sabi pa lang, oh sige, gusto kong bumili niyan. O sige, bebentahan kita. Sige, bukas tayo magde-decide. O, doon pa lang, wala pang financial event. So, hindi pa natin i-record yan. We have identified that that event is not yet financial in nature, which must be recorded. So, hindi pa. So, first, you have to identify. Oh, paano kung nag-agree na? Oh, they have agreed. Sabi, I'll buy computer equipment from you. Okay, I will sell my computer equipment from you. I will pay this one. Oh, this is my payment. Oh, this is your computer. Oh, now they have agreed. And there is already an exchange of assets. Exchange of cash payment of cash for the computer equipment. So, now that is an event, which is financial in nature. You have identified that transaction and event as financial in nature. Since you have identified that, now you start to record. Oh, you start to record. Identify first, then you record. When you say you record, ilalagay mo na ngayon siya sa books. I-journalize mo na siya. I-identify mo na ngayon kung ano yung mga accounts na affected. O kanina, nagbayad ng cash. So, may cash. I-identify mo yung cash na yan. And then, naglabas ng cash, nagpasok naman ngayon ng computer equipment. So, i-record mo na ngayon. You remove the cash, you deduct cash from your books, and then, you add computer equipment to your book. So, you record. There is a decrease of cash, and there is an increase of another asset in the form of computer equipment. So, ayan na, di ba? Una, in-identify mo. Next, ni-record mo. Ni-record mo yung effect. Ano ba yung naging effect? Nagbawas ka ng cash, nag-increase ka ng asset in the form of computer equipment. So, you record. And then, alam mo kung ano yung alam mo na yun, di ba? Ni-record mo, kinlassify mo din. So, kinlassify mo as an asset, decrease in asset, and increase in another form of asset you classified. And then lastly, you will summarize. After classifying what are the accounts which will be affected, cash and then computer equipment, you will summarize. Summarize mo na ngayon yung naging effect. At the end of the month or at the end of the year, you will get the summary or the total assets for the company, total liabilities for the company, total equity for the company, total income, and total expenses. Yun, summarization ang tawag doon. And when you summarize, what is the product of your summarization? You will now prepare financial statements. So, the summary will be prepared or reported in a form of financial statements. So, again, it started with identifying, and then you record. How will you record? You classify the accounts, and then after that, you will summarize. So, yan ang accounting. So, yung accounting, again, is not only counting, hindi siya pagbibilang ng pera. Hindi din siya yung bibilangin mo lang kung ilan yung assets mo. It is a very, very, very complex but complete process. It starts with identifying all the activities, all the events, all the transactions which are financial in nature, and recording all of it. And after that, you classify what are the accounts, and then you summarize. So, dapat kompleto yung process. That is the accounting. It starts from identifying until summarizing. So, again, what is the basic purpose of accounting? It is to supply financial information to users of the information to help them make informed judgments and better decisions. Ano ba ang purpose? Bakit kailangan accounting? Para makapag-decide ng mabuti si owner. Ikaw as an owner of your business, kailangan mong malaman kung ilan na ba yung pera mo. Para kung wala ka ng pera, maglo-loan ka. Or, ilan na ba yung income mo? Para kung hindi ka naman kumikita, isara mo na lang yung business mo. O, ilan na ba yung mga liabilities mo? Ilan na yung utang mo? O, ang dami-dami mo na palang utang. O, mag-stop ka na sa pag-uutang mo. Or, bayaran mo na yung mga utang mo. Ba? So, that is the purpose of accounting. We supply the financial information to users in order for them to make informed judgments and better decisions. Because how can you make informed judgments, or how can you make decisions if you don't have the financial information? Kung hindi mo naman alam, hindi mo na na-assess kung ilan na yung assets, liabilities mo. Hindi mo na alam kung ilan yung income and expenses mo. Paano ka na ngayon makakapag-decide ng mabuti? Kung magbebenta ka pa ba o hindi na? Kung sobra-sobra na ba yung expense na i-incur mo? Magtitipid ka ba o hindi? O, kailangan meron kang financial information. And, example ng mga decision na ito, resources or obligations of the business. O yan. How will you monitor how many are your obligations already? If you look at your total liabilities, and you won't be able to know your total liabilities if you have not undergone accounting. Hindi mo malalaman kung ilan na yung obligations mo kung hindi ka nag-record, kung hindi ka nag-identify, kung hindi ka nag-summarize. O, again, next, interest being paid on current obligations. O, kung hindi mo alam kung ilan yung obligations mo, hindi mo alam kung ilan yung interest na kailangan mo bayaran sa mga obligations mo. Cash inflows and outflows. Paano mo malalaman kung may pera ka pa ba o wala? O, paano mo ma-identify yung cash flows and inflows mo kung hindi ka nag-identify, hindi ka nag-record, hindi ka nag-summarize? So, yun yung relevance ni accounting. It provides this information to users. Sabi dito, management also analyzes the obligations of the business to check if it still could handle additional obligations to result from borrowing from the bank, or cash inflows and outflows are analyzed to see whether the business would repay the bank loan. Ayan. So, yan yung mga financial information na pinoprovide ni accounting. Now, accounting as a language naman. Accounting is a language, which means that it communicates ideas or information to others. So, accounting is not only a process, it is also a language because it informs, it communicates to the users of our financial information na ito na pala ang nangyayari sa corporation mo. Ito na pala ang nangyayari sa business mo. So, ano naman ngayon ang difference ni accounting and bookkeeping? So, akala ng iba, si accounting and bookkeeping is the same. Well, it's not. Accounting is broader and bookkeeping is simpler or lesser in scope. So, bookkeeping is the procedural or mechanical aspect of accounting. Yung pag-record lang. Pag nagre-record ka, bookkeeping yun. Yun na yun. You're keeping the books. You're keeping the record. You are recording and then you keep the books. Bookkeeping. Ganun lang yun sa madaling salita. But accounting goes beyond bookkeeping. Why? Because it starts from identifying, di ba? And then recording. But after that recording, you summarize. And you interpret the information to other people or to the users of the information. You interpret. How? You analyze. Meron kasi tinatawag sa accounting na analysis. Management, advisory, wherein they provide analysis, they explain to these users na ganito na po ang nangyayari, this is the advice that we're going to give you. You should sell your investments because this investment is already losing. Or they analyze the sales. Your sales has decreased for this year and this is what you should do. Yan, part ni accounting yan. It goes beyond bookkeeping. It includes the interpretation of the information recorded under bookkeeping. And aside from the fact that accounting is broader than the bookkeeping, bookkeeping may only be done by, properly trained accountants. But when you say practice of accountancy or accounting, it must be done by a certified public accountant. There is a certification that is required prior to the practice of accountancy. Otherwise, if you're practicing accountancy without the certain certification, then you might be liable for an unlawful act. Kasi meron tayong tinatawag na Accountancy Act. Yan, batas yan that governs the practice of accountancy. If you are practicing without the license, then that is an unlawful act. Pero pag bookkeeping, hindi mo kailangan ng license, hindi mo kailangan ng certification. It may be done by properly trained non-accountants. As long as you have the background in accounting, recording, you can perform bookkeeping. Now, what about accountancy as a profession? We have discussed the accounting as a process. Now, accountancy as a profession, it says that while accounting is an information system, accounting is also a profession. So it is a profession because professionals practice this accountancy or accounting. Sabi, accounting is a profession because it has the attributes required of a profession. It requires that there must be a mastery of particular intellectual skill acquired by training and education. So, kailangan trained ka, kailangan certified ka. And not only that, you must also be able to continually learn. So, meron tayong tinatawag na continuing professional development. Once you have a certificate or you are registered as a certified public accountant, it doesn't stop there. You must learn. You must attend certain trainings, certain seminars in order for you to continually develop your profession. Required yun para makapag-renew ka ng license mo. And aside from that, there must be also adherence to a code of conduct or code of values. Yan yung nakalagay sa code of ethics ni accountancy. It is related to the Accountancy Act. There is what we call the code of ethics. Now, accountants are not only expected to be well-trained or skilled or academically proficient, they must also be imbued with values and good conduct. And any person or any accountant who is performing unethical acts will be penalized accordingly. And lastly, acceptance of a duty to the society as a whole. So, there is a duty. When you say accounting, you're not performing that for yourself. Actually, you're performing that for the good of the general public, for the good of the employers, for the good of the investors, the creditors, and all other sectors of the community. It is primarily a public practice, public service. So the public needs our service in order for them to perform an informed judgment. So what are the different sectors of accounting practice? We have public sector or public practice. Pag sinabing public practice, you are giving your service to the general public without discrimination. So wala kang pinipiling sector lang. Wala kang sariling hindi ka nakatali sa isang corporation or company na sila lang yung pinaperforman mo ng accounting profession mo. So, paano ba to? This sector includes individual practitioners. So, kung nagpe-practice ka, meron kang sariling firm, tumatanggap ka ng kahit sinong kliyente, yan ay public practice because you give your service to the public without discrimination. You render your services to the general public. So, example ng public practice, auditing. So, this is the most common service being provided by CPAs. They audit certain entities, certain businesses. Ano pa? Tax services to the general public. So, yung kliyente mo, magpapa-advise sa'yo about sa tax implications magpapa-file sa'yo ng tax returns or magpapa-compute sa'yo ng tax due. Yan, tax services yan. And another, this is what we call management consulting services. So, ito yung sinasabi ko kanina na we provide advisory or consulting services to clients on matter of accounting, finance, business policies, organization procedures, budgeting, product costing, and conduct of operations. So, hindi lang kasi nag-prepare ka, nag-compute ka, ito na yung assets, liabilities, and equity mo. Minsan kasi, ina-explain natin yan sa iba. Ina-advise natin sila na dahil ganito na ang level ng assets mo, then you must use these assets, excess assets, or idle assets in order to gain more income. Ayan. Or, you have already high level of liabilities, then we advise that you should pay your liabilities, o di kaya you have a very big amount of expenses, you must cut your expenses, ganon. So, we provide advisory consulting services to clients. So, this is public practice. Now, we also have commerce and industry. When I say commerce and industry, you are employed. You are giving your services into a particular company or a company. So, employed ka. Accountant ka ni Shell. Accountant ka ni McDo. Accountant ka ni Jollibee. Diyan ka lang. O, di private practice yan. Commerce and industry yan. Compared mo dun sa kabila, meron ka sariling firm. Kahit sinong pwedeng lumapit sa'yo, bibigyan mo ng accounting service. Yan, public practice yun. Pero kung empleyado ka ng iba, private practice yan, commerce and industry. Kasi sa kanila ka lang, nagpa-perform ng accounting profession mo. So, ano ba yan? Accountants are employed in various positions such as Vice President for Finance, Chief Accountant, Chief Financial Officer, Cost Accountant, Internal Auditor, Budget Officer, and etc. O ano naman yung education? Kagaya namin. Kayo din in the future if you want. So this is what we call education. You are being an academician. You teach the future accountants. So these area employs accountants as professors, reviewers, or researchers. How about the government? So, the accountants sa government, accountants which are hired as consultants, as staff, auditor, budget officer in the government, or all the agencies, or all the branches of the government, the LGU, the different GOCCs, and etc. So, that is government practice. Okay, so let's not discuss this na. Gusto lang sabihin kasi dyan is that the accounting has evolved. Before, they are using manual recording. So, dati pa yun. Kung magde-decide ka, magbibilang ka ng pera, magbibilang ka ng resources, dati pang may ganyan yung accounting. Hindi lang formal ang pagtawag sa kanya. Until na ito ay na-develop, ito ay pinag-aralan ng mabuti hanggang sa na kompleto yung accounting process na yan. Hanggang sa nag-evolve siya. And then, hanggang sa hindi na siya naging manual, naging technologically advanced na din ang accounting natin. We don't use manual books anymore. We use the different systems, accounting systems. Ayun. So, nag-evolve si accounting. But from the very beginning, it is already existing. Now, what about the fields of accounting? We have different fields of accounting. We have financial accounting, management accounting, cost accounting, tax accounting, government accounting. Pag financial accounting, it focuses on the preparation and presentation of general purpose financial statements with the aim of meeting most of the needs of the external users. So, financial accounting, it focuses on the financial statements. Yan. Pag sinabi mong general purpose financial statements, yun yung summary. Yun yung makikita mo na yung assets, liabilities, and equity. Makikita mo yung income statement. Yun yung statement of changes in owner's equity. Yan, lahat ng financial statements. From recording until summarizing, yan yun. Financial accounting. Pag management accounting, ano naman yan? Pag sinabi mong management accounting, it is concerned with financial reporting to the internal users, to the management. Pag management accounting kasi, nag-a-advise ka kay management kung anong dapat niyang gawin. So, paano ba pa-i-increase yung sales? Paano ba pababain yung expense? Paano ba magbabayad ng liabilities? Kaya ba ni company magbayad ng liabilities based on the assets that is currently owned by the company? Ayan. So, more on management advising, management advisory services. How about cost accounting? Cost accounting naman, it focuses on the cost. Maganda to sa mga production companies, yung mga manufacturing companies, para ma-determine nila kung ano ba talaga yung included sa cost nila. Yan yung specialization ng cost accounting. They specialize on determining the cost. What are the different ways of determining the cost? Yan, cost accounting. Meron kayong subject nito in your latter years. So, merong financial accounting, mga FinAc, meron din kayong management accounting, management advisory services, may ganyan din kayong subject. Meron din kayong cost accounting. And of course, meron din kayong tax accounting. Pag sabi mong tax accounting, it deals with the taxation law. How will you perform accounting? By incorporating the taxation law. So, how will you compute for the tax due of your clients? How will you provide tax planning or tax consultancy? So, yan. Meron din kayong subject na taxation. And then, lastly, you have government accounting. Pag sinabi mo namang government accounting, how will you account the transactions of the government? Magkaiba kasi yung government accounting. Pagka higher year nyo, fourth year nyo, meron kayong subject na ganyan. Advanced accounting yun. You will know how to record the different government transactions. It is somehow different. Meron lang siyang konting pagkakaiba sa business accounting kumpara sa government accounting. Okay, now, accounting and technology. What is this? Accounting and technology, it means that the accounting has revolutionized. Okay? It started from manual recording. Before, there is only manual recording. They use pen and paper. They use the books, the manual books, in order to record for the transactions. But now, since the technology has already emerged, has already developed, so we use now the technology at our advantage. We use different systems. There are different accounting systems in order to assist the accountants in performing the recording and summarizing. So, meron na tayong mga different systems. Accounting systems, meron din tayong Excel, meron tayong mga SAP, yan, mga enterprise resource planning, mga ERP. Sa susunod, magkakaroon kayo ng subject na ganyan yung accounting systems. Yan. Kung paano gumamit ng mismong computerized accounting system, and how will you also study the different processes of accounting system? How will you audit the accounting system? Paano mo malalaman kung tama ang ginagawa ni accounting system? If it provides the proper recording, o baka naman may fraudulent act na nakatago doon sa accounting system na yon. Baka naman may mga inconsistencies. Yan. So, maaaral nyo din yan in the future. But, what is important here is that from the manual recording, it has emerged and it has developed into using information technology in order to facilitate the ease of recording and to facilitate the speedy preparation of financial statements. Okay. So, sabi nga, di ba, na accounting is a dynamic profession. It continues to grow and serve the needs of the users of financial information. And now we're using different accounting technologies. So let's go to the basic accounting concepts and the financial statements. So chapter 1 mentions that accounting is the language of business. A language has basic concepts of underlying principle, which must be followed for its proper use. Okay, so language siya, di ba? And accounting as a language, it means that para ma-communicate mo siya or para makapag-provide siya ng information, kailangan na may sinusunod siyang generally accepted accounting principles. O, ano ba ibig sabihin ng GAAP na yan? Or generally accepted accounting principles. It comprises the accounting principles, processes, standards, and underlying assumptions that are used in the financial statements. So, si accounting, hindi naman siya bara-bara na wala lang. Gusto ko lang mag-record, gusto ko lang mag-account. Meron niyang guidelines. Meron niyang principles. Meron niyang processes. Meron niyang standards. May sinusunod yan. Meron niyang rules na sinusunod. Para uniform lahat. Kaya, kahit na palipat-lipat ka ng company, kahit na magtanong ka sa iba't ibang company, pareho ang sinusunod na paraan ng accounting. Why? Because we have these so-called generally accepted accounting principles. Generally, all these corporations must comply with these principles. Okay, ano ba itong mga ito? So, we have here the basic accounting principles. But before we discuss that, we have what we call Financial Reporting Standards Council. Sino ba itong FRSC na ito? This is the official accounting standard setting body in the Philippines. Di ba meron tayong standards accounting na sinusunod? Sinong gumagawa niyan? FRSC yan. Sila yung gumagawa ng standards. Or, kung gawa ng standards, they amend, they make necessary modifications in order to keep abreast of the developments in the accounting. So, sila yung nagsiset ng standard, sila din yung nagmo-modify. Then, the FRSC issues standards which constitute the Philippine GAAP. So, yung standards na yun ay tinatawag natin na generally accepted accounting principles. And these standards are actually the financial standards reporting. Ano ba yun? These are called the Philippine Financial Reporting Standards. O ulit. Meron tayong tinatawag na GAAP, Generally Accepted Accounting Principles. And these principles are the basis of the standards. Magkaiba pa si GAAP, magkaiba pa si standards. Si standards kasi mas specific. Si Generally Accepted Accounting Principles, yun lang yung mga underlying principles. Ano dapat yung mga masusunod kapag gagawa na ng guidelines? Yun lang yung general principles. O ngayon, gagawa na ng guidelines. Sino gagawa ng guidelines? Si FRSC, si Financial Reporting Standards Council. Gawa siya ng official accounting standards for the Philippines na susundan ng lahat ng accountants. At anong tawag doon sa standards na yan pag ginawa? This is now the PFRS, the Philippine Financial Reporting Standards. So, this development of Philippine GAAP and Philippine Financial Reporting Standards is based on accounting concepts and the framework for the preparation of the PFRS. So, bago magawa yung PFRS, yung Philippine Financial Reporting Standards, kailangan sumusunod muna siya sa Generally Accepted Accounting Principles and Basic Accounting Concepts. Yan. So, ang framework, ibig sabihin, ang basis ng Philippine Financial Reporting Standards ay si Generally Accepted Accounting Principles. And what are these basic principles that we have? This concept states, ito, number 1, basic accounting concepts. The business entity principle. So, mag-start na tayo sa basic accounting concepts, ha. Number 1, business entity principle. This concept states that the business is considered distinct and separate from the owners of the business. So, ibig sabihin, yung transactions ni owners ay hindi transactions ni business. Yung transactions ni business ay iba pa sa transactions ni business owner na personal. So, magkaiba sila. Kung ano lang yung transactions ni business, yun lang ang i-record. Pero yung mga transactions, okay, ulit. Kung ano lang yung transactions ni business, yun lang ang i-record. Separate siya doon sa transactions ni owner. Okay? Separate siya. So, kung si business bumili ng computer para sa business, i-record mo yan as part of the business transaction. Pero kung bumili si business owner ng computer niya para sa sarili niya, hindi naman gagamitin sa business, ay wag mo yan i-record as part of the business transaction. So, yun lang yung simpleng example na the business is considered distinct and separate from the owners of the business. Ano pa? Pag may utang si business, yung utang ni business na para sa pagpapatayo ng building niya, para sa pambili ng mga goods niya, utang ni business yan. Pero kung si Mr. Business Owner nangutang ng pambayad, nangutang kay kumpare, ng pambayad ng tuition ng anak niya, iba yan. Huwag mo i-record yan. That is a personal transaction. It should not be included in the records of the business. Okay? So, an accounting entity is an organization that is accounted for as a separate economic unit. Clear-cut distinctions are made between entities so as not to confuse its affairs with those of the owner of those entities. So, ibig sabihin, hinihiwalay mo. Kung ano lang yung transactions in business, yun lang. Kung ano naman transactions ni owner, yun lang, sa kanya lang yun. In order to avoid confusion. And, of course, in order to properly account for the financial position, financial performance of the business. O, example daw. Leslie Franco organized a panda laundry. Organize na siya, gumawa na siya ng laundry shop niya. So, si Leslie, na proprietor, magkaiba doon sa business niya mismo. Okay? So, separate entities yan. Iba naman yung sinasabi natin kanina na walang separate juridical personality. Iba naman yun. In terms of in terms of liability. Na kapag may utang si business, na ubos na yung assets ni business, dapat bayaran ni owner. Iba din yun. Iba naman itong sinasabi na separate entities. Sinasabi dito, business entity principle is that the business transactions of the business must be separate from the business transaction, the transactions or the personal transactions of the owner. So, example. When Leslie invests cash into the business, the cash is no longer a personal resource of Leslie. Correct. So, kapag nag-invest ng cash si Leslie sa business, hindi na cash ni Leslie yan. Cash na yan ni business. Cash na yan ng laundry business. Another one. Pag nag-incur ng expense si Leslie, para sa pagkain niya, nagutom siya, sarili niyang pagkain habang namamasyal siya, hindi yan expense ni laundry. Huwag mong isama yan. Sarili yan ni Leslie. Hindi naman related yung pagkagutom at pag-inom ng tubig, kung ano-anong milk tea. Hindi yun related doon sa laundry. Okay? Another one. Assume that on a certain day, Leslie received 25,000 cash from the sale of her cell phone to Sheena, a personal friend. Nagbenta daw siya ng cellphone. Para saan? Gusto lang niya. Gusto lang niya magbenta ng cellphone. Yung cash na natanggap niya ay 10,000. Tapos, nakatanggap naman siya ng 15,000 sa customers niya. So, magkano total cash na meron siya sa kamay niya? 25,000. So, yung pera talaga ni laundry, magkano lang? 15,000 lang. Pag mo isasama yung 10,000 na pinagbentahan niya ng cellphone niya. Yung 15,000 lang na pinagbentahan sa pag-provide ng laundry service, yun lang dapat ang pera ni laundry. Okay? And then lastly, assume that Leslie rents her own apartment in Tondo. And assume further that Panda Laundry is located in another rented apartment 2 blocks away. O, edi, yung pinambayad ni Leslie na rent niya doon sa apartment niya is different expense from that of the payment for the rent of the Panda Laundry. O, yung renta mo doon sa bahay mong sarili, Leslie, hindi yan expense ni laundry. Ang expense lang ni laundry ay yung renta doon sa shop, sa laundry shop. Okay? So, naintindihan nyo na. Separate business entity. Alam nyo naman yan eh. Nire-review lang natin. Very matalino naman kayong lahat. Kaya, alam nyo na yun. How about dual effect of business transactions? So, ito na. Pag sabi mong dual effect, double entry system. Yan, dual effect. Laging dalawa ang naapektuhan. Saan? Whenever there is a business transaction that takes place, accounting assumes that the value received is equal to the value given up. So, laging ganon. Kung may natanggap na asset or property, may give up din. Okay? Example. Bumili ako. Si laundry na lang. Sige, si laundry. Bumili ako ng washing machine. Anong gagawin ko? Bibili nga akong washing machine eh. So, magbabayad ako. Magkano yung washing machine? 20,000 pesos. Magbabayad ako. 20,000 pesos, kuya, pabili pa akong washing machine. Binigay ko yung pera, nakatanggap ngayon ako ng washing machine. So, yan yung example ng dual effect. So, for the value received, I have received a new washing machine. I bought a new washing machine, but I also gave up 20,000 pesos. So, hindi lang ang titingnan mo yung pagtanggap mo ng washing machine. Uy, wow, may washing machine kami bago. There's an asset. But, as equivalent to the value given, to the value received, I received the washing machine. But don't forget that you have given up a value which is 20,000 pesos. So, as there is an increase in your asset equivalent to a 20,000 washing machine, that's the value of your washing machine, you also have given up 20,000 cash. So, there is also a decrease in asset. So, nag-increase nga yung asset mo in the form of equipment, laundry equipment, nag-decrease naman din yung asset mo in the form of cash. So, anong nangyari? Dalawa. May pumasok na asset, may lumabas din na asset. Ano naman? Another example. Magbabayad tayong utang. May utang si business. Hindi amount of 50,000 pesos. Naniningil na ngayon si third person. Sabi, due date na ng utang mo. Magbayad ka na. Okay po. Sige, magbabayad na po. Nagbayad tayo. Magkano? 50,000 pesos. Nagbayad tayo. 50,000 pesos. Okay, thank you. Bayad na. Ano nga yung nangyari dyan? Double effect din yan. Dual effect. Hindi lang yung pagbayad ang titingnan mo. Nagbayad ka, di ba, 50,000? There's a decrease of cash. Decrease of asset in the amount of 50,000 pesos. But, there is also a decrease in liability. Nabawasan ang pera mo, correct. Pero nabawasan din ang utang mo. So, for a value given up, which is 50,000 pesos, you also receive something. There's also another effect, which is the decrease in your liability. So, ayun. Accounting assumes that the value received is equal to the value given up. Another example. Nagbebenta ko ng cellphone, buy and sell. Yan ang business ko. Benta ko. Sabi ko bumili pala si Mr. A. Bumili siya ng cellphone in the amount of 15,000 pesos. Sige, so binenta ko na. Binigay ko na yung cellphone. Nakatanggap ako ng cash, 15,000 pesos. So, dual effect din yun. There is a value received, 15,000 pesos. That is your income. That is your revenue. But, there's also a value given up. The cost of the cellphone. You have given away the cellphone because you have sold it. So, there is an increase of cash, 15,000, but there is a decrease of your inventory. There's a decrease of your inventory because you've already sold part of your inventory. So, that is a dual effect of business transactions. Then, next, matching principle. Matching principle. Ano naman yung matching principle? It says that profit or loss can only be measured if there is a proper matching of the income earned and the expenses incurred within one accounting period. This means that income that is recorded and reported in one accounting period should be matched by recognition of the expenses that directly or indirectly contributed to the generation of income. It means that for every income received or for every income earned by a business, there is also a corresponding expense. So, once na nag-earn si business, meron ding expense na kaakibat yan. So, matching principles. The profit must be matched with the loss, or the income must be matched with the expense. Example, Panda Laundry received a cash, 15,000 pesos from the provision of services to customers. Assuming that all services are for cash, and that the company incurred rent expenses. Then the company earned a profit of 3,000 pesos for the period. So, yung 15,000 pesos na natanggap as an income for the services rendered, mayroon ding mga kaakibat na expenses yan. Hindi ka naman naka-earn ng income nung wala ka namang expense na nai-incur. So, 15,000 pesos na cash or income, iba-match mo yan sa mga expenses mo. Rent expense mo na 5,000. Water expense mo na 7,000. So, if you have already matched that, may matitira ngayon, yan na yung profit. So, kailangan may matching principle. For every income earned, you recognize also the expense incurred. Example naman, kagaya nung kanina, nagbenta tayong cellphone. 15,000 pesos. Pero ang halaga ng cellphone na binenta mo is 10,000 pesos. So, for every income earned, meron kang 15,000 na na-receive, gross income mo yun from the cellphone that you've sold, pero meron ka ding cost. May cost ka din doon. Yung halaga ng cellphone na 10,000 pesos. So, ima-match mo yun. May income ka, may expense ka din. Yung natira doon, yun lang yung net income mo. Okay? So, ito, another example. If Earl Garcia Photocopy Center earns income of 10,000 pesos for the month of December, the related cost should be matched against its income. So, yung income must be matched with the cost in order to compute for the profit or loss.